Bunny Michael,
James McCrae.
what's happening?
Not much.
Congratulations on the book launch.
Thank you so much.
Hello, Higher Self, out into the world right now, an
Yep.
outsider's guide to loving yourself in a tough world.
And it is a tough world.
It certainly is. It feels like it's getting tougher too.
Yeah.
But we're here in Austin, Texas,
Yep.
and you grew up in Texas.
I grew up in Texas. I grew up in Dallas in the
Yeah.
suburbs. And I went to school like at the Arts Magnet High School in Dallas. Thank goddess, because I don't know if I would have made it through public high school experience. So yeah, I'm really grateful for that. But then right when I turned, right after high school, I left.
What do you remember from growing up in Texas? Like, I've lived here now for like 3.5 years, and I had never been here before. My only experience of Texas is Austin, which I
Yeah.
think is an anomaly in Texas. What are the good and bad memories of growing up in such a huge and interesting state?
Well, when it's all it's kind of like just what it is.
Yeah.
But I grew up, my dad's Mexican, and what my big memories are eating really good food and like family barbecues and cookouts and hanging out and stuff like that. But another big memory is that my mom really wanted to raise me and my sisters at the better school. So we didn't have much money. So we ended up moving into like a predominantly white suburban neighborhood, but we lived in an apartment and me and my two sisters shared a room. So I went to school with mostly white kids, which was a whole experience, hence the outsider. Another reason why I felt like an outsider.
Did you feel accepted, or did you start to notice then that, okay, being racially different is a thing?
I just tried not to think about it as much as I could. And I really felt uncomfortable when it got pointed out in some way, which it always did. Mm-hmm. And I would always feel a lot of shame about it. And it was really hard and painful. But at the time, I didn't really know that that's what was happening. I just was kind of like, oh, I'm not as pretty as these people. And I associated whiteness also with like money, because all of the white kids had money in that neighborhood.
Right.
So everything was kind of whiteness associated, like parents being like moms being home, packing your lunch, good snacks, like always having the right supplies in school, like every reason why I felt less than in like the social aspect of like school, I was tied into race in some capacity.
Yeah. What was your creativity like at that time? You're one of the most creative people I know, and you're such a multidimensional artist, author, musician, like so many things. When did that creative light turn on for you? Like, what kind of creativity were you doing as a kid?
When I was a kid, I was such a weirdo, and my sisters called me weird, and my parents called me weird, and my cousins called me weird because I would just act weird to try to get a laugh or get a reaction or get attention, and, just be really playful and do like weird dances and make weird noises and just be kind of performing all of the time in this way. And so it was kind of like, but it was just like very... I don't know, very odd behavior, I guess you could explain it. And then I kind of realized, oh, maybe I should be doing some acting. So I did some like acting theater stuff. And then when I was in school and at the Arts Magnet School, that's when I really started to understand, oh, maybe I'm an artist. And then when I was in the 9th grade, I took LSD for the first time. And I remember the moment when I was tripping and I kind of understood that I was an artist, because I was like drawing this drawing of the Virgin Mary, and I saw this like lineage of like my mom and my ancestors, and I just had this one of those moments of when you're like in 9th grade when you're a kid still.
Sure.
And I was like, and I remember it very clearly because I was like, I'm an artist. Like it all just became very clear. Yeah. And that was like a formative experience for sure.
That's fascinating. And we both had this similar life experience of moving to New York City. Mm-hmm. You moved there earlier than I did. I think, did you move there straight out of high school?
Yes, I moved there a week before September 11th happened.
Wow. What was that like? I mean, 9/11 is your welcome to the city,
Yeah.
but also just the culture shock and like being out of the fishbowl and into the frying pan.
Yeah, well, as being a little baby queer, it was really exciting for me
I
because
bet.
I was like, I had just gotten my heart broken because I had my girlfriend in high school and she had gone to New York a year earlier, and then I found out she'd been cheating on me, and so we like broke up right before my college started. But I remember coming to New York and being like, oh my gosh, there's all these gay people here. Like my life isn't over. So it was kind of a blast, and it was really fun and also extremely eye-opening because I went to college for theater, but then I got to New York and I was like, oh, you can do whatever you want artistically. It doesn't matter if you're trained in it. You can just do. And I ended up meeting, other weirdos and kind of went from there.
How long were you on like the track of being an actor? Did you audition? Were you in stage things, like screen things? Like what was your acting career like?
Well, I did theater in college, and then I did, go on auditions afterwards, and I was in like a couple commercials and stuff. But I quickly realized that I didn't really have what it took in terms of auditioning. It just was so hard and also humiliating experience. And, as an artist, you want to be able to make your own stuff. But so then I started performing music, but it was very theatrical, and I still perform, and I actually do act occasionally. I was in like a couple episodes of High Maintenance. And
were you really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
And
that's great.
Yeah, and I did, produced and acted in that web series.
Yep.
So I do, it's not the same. I don't audition for anything, and those experiences that I've had have been just like people asking me to do it. But so I'm still like, I still really like it, but I have to give props to like professional actors who put themselves out there like that all of the time, because it was just such a difficult lifestyle.
Yeah.
So I was like, I don't know. I don't have what it takes for this. Yeah.
I mean, I feel like being an artist of any sort, getting used to rejection is such a part of that journey. I mean, even as an author, like I can't even tell you how many rejections my books have gotten, before like getting picked up.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's
is.
just such a, I think it's ultimately a good thing because it tests your resolve, and it like really helps you focus and be like, is this what I really want? And clarify your purpose and like sink into what it is that you really want to do. Yeah.
It definitely does that. And also I think when you are not fitting into necessarily what the thing is that already exists, like for me, like I think I mentioned the other night at the Sunflower event that I got kicked out of my fine arts program in college, like my second year, because you had to like re-audition, and they were like, you're not classically trained in potential.
Was that in like painting, or what was
no, it was for acting.
Kind of art?
It was for theater. It was
okay.
like a classical theater training, and I just didn't have what it took according to them. But that led to me doing like more like a different program that was like, weird stuff. And so,
yeah.
But I guess what I'm saying is like sometimes when you're being rejected for something is because you're not meant to fit into that, and you're supposed to be like over there. You're supposed to make something that is your own. And especially for people who are different, who have never been included in those spaces, you definitely need to make your own space.
Yeah, I feel that. I feel like the innovators get rejected from the traditional like institutions as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like no matter what you do, your social media accounts, your book, your music, I feel like you're always an innovator and a trailblazer. Oh. And I feel like institutional like places don't always appreciate or understand innovation within their field, because they're measuring people's performance based on the past and what has been done in the past and what is traditional. Yeah. And then but I feel like the best artists like find a way to break through that and create something new. And but in doing so, they kind of have to blaze their own trail a little bit.
Yeah.
Do you have any? I'm curious about. I'm really big on this idea of like creative lineage.
Mm-hmm.
Like people talk about there's different spiritual lineages, and people have different, not gurus, but they, or just like guides or spirit guides or people that have kind of helped show them the way.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious if just like whether you were a teenager or in your 20s or now, music, writers, like who are some of your creative spirit guides that have kind of helped show you the way?
Well, I think one really formative person I wanted to mention is Karen Drager, who is Fever Ray, because I kind of have a wild story. I don't know if I've told you this story, but when I kind of get into a little bit in my book, but I was in a really toxic, abusive relationship, and I had a music project with that person. And when I finally decided to leave the abusive relationship, I left the music project, which was really hard for me because I had thought this was going to be my thing that gives me the success, right? But I had to quit it to basically save my life and start from scratch. And I remember like being so down and out and opening up my laptop and seeing the Fever Ray music video for When I Grow Up. That song, the music video is so badass and so amazing. And I remember seeing, because she was in the Knife with her brother.
Oh, I remember that.
And so this was her solo thing. And I saw that she was doing a solo thing, and I was like, just something, and it was so weird and so like, it was just like the weirdest thing you could see, but it was so beautiful. And I thought to myself, okay, like I can do this. I can do this on my own. I know I can do it on my own. And then, years later in 2018, and I did start doing it on my own and, teach myself how to like produce stuff and blah, blah. And eventually started making the memes and started this whole thing, right? And then in 2018, I got contacted by her assistant, and she asked me to open up for her on tour for Fever Ray because she had seen the memes.
Wow.
Funny, right? And then listened to my music. And then I ended up on tour with her. We spent so much time together, and I told her the story. And it was just this really, this moment where I was just like, wow, because I got the message, do you want to go on tour with Fever Ray, in the middle of the night? I just happened to pick up my phone, like a DM on Instagram, and I was like, wait, what? Out of nowhere. I mean, really out of nowhere. I mean, I wasn't like involved in music industry scene in any capacity. It was like so random. And so, yeah, I mean, that was like a huge one and a huge influence on me. And she is, yeah.
What about early on? What about when you were a kid? Like, what did someone kind of just like inspire you when you were young?
When I was like really young in junior high, well, Selena's a big influence.
Yeah.
Because I actually got to see Selena in concert when I was little.
Wow.
Because I told you my parents did the Tejano music concerts and stuff. So she performed at my parents' event before she passed.
Wow.
But also in junior high, like I really got into Bone Thugs and Harmony. Me and my friends
Who didn't?
Really, I know, we're like really into Bone Thugs. And
I used to listen to the song First of the Month on the first of every month.
Yeah.
because it was such a cool song, like in the mid 90s when we were growing up.
I mean, it's hilarious that me and my friends were like listening to this and thinking we were like hard or something, but they were a big influence on me, and I think still are in many ways, because it was like, I feel like artistically I like to like merge worlds, like I like to be like, okay, I like Selena, I like Bjork, I like Bone Thugs. I want something that combines all of those vibes. Totally. Because that's who I am.
Totally.
So I've always been a person, being on the outside has kind of made me a person that likes to collage things together and recognize that a lot of people are like that. A lot of people and I love like this weird merging of worlds aesthetically and all of that.
I love that. Speaking of merging worlds, and I want to talk about your book, but first I want to talk about, do you remember when you made your first meme? Because we're both part of this Instagram culture, and people know me for my memes, and I know that like I became aware of you as so many people did through your memes. I don't remember if that was like 2017 ish, 2018 maybe, but you were making spiritual memes pretty early on, and you were also like inserting yourself. I guess that was kind of the actor part of you, was like putting yourself into your memes as a character
Mm-hmm.
in a way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So tell me about your meme journey and how you came to kind of develop that, because I think there's a lot of memes that are on Instagram now, but to like use the meme as a medium for artistic expression and even like spiritual insight, you were definitely an innovator and a trailblazer for doing that. So how did that get started for you?
Well, before I was started making the memes, I was, artist doing lots of different things, and I actually made photographs, self-portraits of two of me. And I had like an art show in Brooklyn where of like photographs in it, but it was just the photos of two and me, and two of me. I didn't even call it higher self, but it was just like something. And
What was the idea? Was it like two of you interacting in some way, or
yeah, it was like interacting and just I mean, to be honest, like I just was like making things I thought looked cool.
Yeah.
And I didn't really understand what I was making.
Yeah.
If I had to be perfectly honest. And then I kind of was like going through another level of spiritual awakening, and I was really down and out, and I had a vision of my higher self, and it was like incredibly life-saving and beautiful. And I thought to myself, oh, like I'm not going to put anything out in the world artistically unless it's going to like help me love myself, because I was basically like, I can't do this anymore. It has to be about like saving my own life pretty much. And then out of that, I did this like astrology workshop through my dear friend Channing Nicholas, and it was like a second house, 10th house. And this was like when I knew I don't know a ton about astrology. I'm not an expert now, but then I knew even less. And it was a second house, 10th house thing, and I found out my 10th house was Cancer. And something in my mind was like, I thought it was going to be like performing and but it was like Cancer, emotions. Oh, and something just clicked in my mind that I was like, I need to say the thing. Like I was just like, I need to like say what I'm feeling. And then at the same time, there was those memes going around of the evil Kermit memes.
Yes.
Which I had seen a bunch.
It's like Kermit is looking at an image of evil Kermit, which is like a Kermit wearing like this black cloak.
Yes. And they were really popular. And it was like saying the Kermit thought, and then it was saying like the lower thought, or like the negative thought, or whatever. And I was like, what if I did that, but for the voice that I had been starting to hear, ever since I had that vision of my higher self, I was like hearing this voice of my higher self. And I was like, what if I just like started making that because I don't know what else to do, and I had no expectations at all. It was literally me just like being this needs to be my spiritual practice. Like, and the first one I made was actually a video meme. Well, I was like, and which I must have like split in like, I don't know what program I used, maybe, I don't know. And it was like when your higher self it's like when your higher self tells you to face your shit or something. So I had like one like here, and like my higher self was like watching me, and the other me was like having a fit or something, like all upset. And that was my first one. And then I posted like 3. I had like 1,000 followers at the time. And then I saw Channing Nicholas liked one. And I was like, whoa, interesting. And my friend was like, you should DM her and just like say, like, thank you for your workshop or whatever. And I was like, oh, all scared because she had like 30K followers, and I was like, she's a star.
That's funny that she had helped inspire the idea, or she had helped you come to the realization that this was kind of a path of yours, and then she also ended up being one of the first people to like the memes.
Yes, and so I DM'd her and I was like, look, I just saw you that you like this, and I just want to let you know that you're a huge inspiration for me deciding to make this, because I'm going through all of these things. And then she was like, what's your Libra situation? which I have a stellium in Libra. And of course she could sense it because it's like the relation to the self.
Okay.
And basically she was like, keep going.
Wow.
And I did. And so, yeah, that's another person. Channy's definitely another person that has been there inspiring me. I definitely look to her as a huge inspiration and stuff. So, yeah.
You know what's funny about that too? Because I don't know a lot about astrology either, but I am a Cancer sun. And I knew you were a Libra, but I was actually going to ask you like if you had any Cancer in your chart because I feel Cancer energy from your content. Because I feel like Cancer is probably the most like comforting sign I feel.
Yeah.
Like nurturing, comforting, and that's how your creativity comes across for me is very nurturing and comforting and almost like a hug. So I'm not surprised at all that helped inspire this.
Yeah.
I want to talk about like just the idea of the higher self a little bit more because that's kind of a term that it's kind of it's accepted and kind of understood, but not necessarily talked about or broken down. So I'm wondering, like, what does the higher self mean to you? And tell me a little more about that vision where the higher self came to you.
Yeah. So basically it started with me feeling really going through a bout of self-loathing and feeling really insignificant. And I was in my bedroom and I just intuitively closed my eyes and I just kind of had an out-of-body experience where I saw myself on the bed through this like vision of like total compassion. And I saw how hard I was being on myself. And I saw how I had been trying for so long to seek this validation through my career, from my parents, from partners, just always reaching all the time and stressing myself out and never ever being enough and never feeling like I was enough. And I saw myself there and I just felt so much compassion. And then I like put my arm around myself and I was like, you're enough now. You're all you need to be. And it was just like this very psychedelic, totally sober experience. And I felt such a deep like surrender. I was like, oh my God. Like it was just like so clear to me that the validation I had been seeking for so long was with what I needed to give myself. And it was just so clear. And so from that day on, I just thought, oh, wow, that was trippy and crazy. But I didn't really totally understand it or call it my higher self or anything like that. And as I started to like, keep integrating that part of me that was like, you're enough, I started to see the thoughts that were, in my mind telling me I wasn't enough. And I realized at some point that it wasn't enough to just be like, oh, that's not true. You are. I really thought I needed to like actually investigate why I have those thoughts and where they came from. And I had gone to therapy and stuff like that before. But even when I was like uncovering my therapy story of like my wounds and I got this from the abandonment issues and attachment stuff, like it still wasn't deep. It still wasn't enough. Like I was like, there's something else that is deeper than just my experience that is contributing to the way that I see myself in the world. And I started to realize that like all of our trauma and all of our cultural conditioning stem from this hierarchical lens that we are conditioned with in our culture from the moment of our socialization. We're told that we aren't inherently worthy. We're told that we need to prove our worth through our accomplishments, our looks, whatever thing, we're taught. And we're all taught a lot of different ways of that. For example, when I had a lot of trauma from my parents not accepting me for being gay. And it was helpful for me to think, oh, well, they're wrong and it's okay to be gay. That was one level of healing. But I actually needed to understand the reasons why they felt that way, how they were conditioned in homophobia, where that came from. We have all of these judgments and biases about ourselves and about each other. And this is stuff that is learned behavior. It is stuff that is ingrained in us, and yet we take it as truth. And we can't really change that, and we can't really heal that until we recognize and separate ourselves from that conditioning. So the higher self became who I was beyond the conditioning of my trauma, beyond the conditioning of our culture. And I ended up calling that conditioning, I use a term called learned hierarchical beliefs, for all of these, or LHBs, for all of these different beliefs that we have that teach us to see things through that lens of hierarchy. Am I better than this person, or am I worse than this person? And, you know, obsessing over constantly needing to climb up that hierarchical ladder.
Absolutely. I love, you know, that's the learned hierarchical beliefs is like a key theme of your book. It's kind of like you're balancing out the higher self and then the learned hierarchical beliefs. And these are like two voices that we all have. We all have cultural conditioning, and everyone's is different depending on their upbringing and their surroundings. And some people are privileged to have less of them than others. But it's something that it's like the ego of the world. And it conditions us to see things through a lens of, like you said, competition and hierarchy, and measuring our worth and our value by external and often arbitrary standards of perfection and excellence and achievement, usually driven by money and capitalism. Whereas the higher self is the soul that is beyond the ego, beyond our learned conditioning, and that's kind of our true self. And your book is such an amazing guide on helping people cut through and really understand their own cultural conditioning first and foremost, and then reconnect with their higher self. And I feel like it's such a valuable terminology, because people use words like ego, and that word is often, I use that word, but it's often vague. And the ego, in a sense, is our own just self-identity, which is fine. And it's okay to have a healthy ego because you want to have a healthy sense of self. But I feel like the learned hierarchical beliefs, you really hit the nail on the head on defining what it is that kind of separates us from our true nature, which exists beyond our cultural conditioning. And it's really a guidebook to help us reconnect with that higher self.
And I think it's helpful too, because it's basically saying, watch out for just the hierarchical lens in everything that you do, because I think sometimes, also in spiritual circles, and you've talked about this too in your work as well, like, you know, they'll bring the hierarchy to spirituality.
For sure.
Oh, well, they're not spiritual enough, and I'm more spiritual than you. And so it's like, LHBs I talk about in my book are very sneaky, because the moment you think, oh, like, for example, like people in my podcast will be like, oh, I feel I'm really struggling because my LHBs are getting to me so much, and I'm trying to not be fat phobic, but like I really suck at it, you know? And I'm like, hold on, because what an LHB will do will be like, oh, yeah, you recognize fat phobia is like not real. Okay. But now you're like not good enough because like you have fat phobia. It's the whole point is to be like, you are inadequate.
Right.
For whatever reason. It doesn't even matter what the reason. That's not the point. The point is to keep you into that frame, that belief that no matter what you do will not be enough.
Sure.
Yeah.
I even like, I even have apprehension now around like using the term spiritual or identifying as a spiritual person. Because I thought about that. I'm like, what does it mean to be a spiritual person?
Yeah.
Because I think about it like, for me, that just means every single human being, the human body is animated by a spirit. We all have a spirit inside of us. We are all at our essence spirits inhabiting a body.
Yeah.
So how can one person be more spiritual than another person?
Yeah,
if you say you're spiritual, are you implying that some people are not?
Yeah, it's very. Yeah, I know. I totally agree with you.
So we talked about your like creative inspiration. I'm just wondering, like, in helping you understand your own like spiritual path, and the nature of the higher self. Were there any influences? I know you said you maybe read the Course of Miracles.
Yeah.
Are there any what are some of your kind of spiritual or philosophical guides that have
Yeah.
helped you understand this landscape?
Yeah, I mean, I could say, like, I mean, you know, I read Eckhart Tolle, A New Earth, when I was in that abusive relationship, and it completely changed everything for me. It helped me realize I could get out. And that was the first time I had ever like heard language like that. I mean, this was a very long time ago, but you know, that was a huge influence on me. Alan Watts, Ram Dass, Terrence McKenna. You know, I love listening to just like YouTube lectures from like psychedelic teachers.
Totally.
And you know, A Return to Love by Marianne Williamson was what got me into A Course in Miracles.
Mm-hmm.
That was a huge influence on my like relationship with my healing. So yeah, I mean, I love all the there's so, I mean, I honestly like so many, and I love reading about, and I also love, like, you know, I'm not a religious person, but I find so much inspiration from, even like, you know, sometimes I'll go to church, or I have gone to church like with my family and cried, you know, because I just felt such deep reverence for, I love sacred spaces.
Yeah.
I love, and I just wish we had more intentional sacred spaces.
Yeah.
I'm very easily moved by just talking about love, and so yeah, I mean, I'm like all about it. All.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I love so we went to see a concert last night. We went to see Jess Williamson, who is like she's from Texas. She's a country artist. You probably didn't know this. I know her music better than you do, but the first song that she played, it's called God in Everything. And the lyrics are like, I see God in everything. And I personally love that sentiment.
Yeah.
Where it's like, so many people think they need to seek out exotic places or teachers, or like they need to go to a certain temple, or like connect with a certain spirit guide. And again, just the fact that we all have a spirit inside of us, like everything, if there is whatever God is, you know, like that term is problematic sometimes, but it's like this is all created by something. And I think creation itself is the God, and consciousness itself is the God, and we're all just aspects of that. So that same life force that gave birth to your higher self and my higher self gave birth to, you know, the trees outside and, you know, everything around us. So for me, I just love like shifting that mentality to making wherever you are a sacred space, because we ourselves are sacred spaces.
Yes.
And finding the holiness in our own backyards.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
I think that was one of my favorite things about, you know, I really like reading Ram Dass's books, because he's talking about being on a spiritual journey while at the same time, you know, trying to like being like a healer too, and like talking about it being this constant, and you know, he talks about so much about like his experience with psychedelics and stuff like that, and it always is just love. That's all it, you know, you go this whole journey and then you realize, but it's all just, it's now, it's right here, it's love, that's it, you know, it's not complicated.
Yeah.
It's so simple.
People want to chase after the next like big enlightenment moment, or this big like eureka moment, and it's like, well, love's been the message the whole time.
It's been here this whole time.
I want to ask you about the relationship between the higher self and creativity. So like for all the creative people out there, how can they integrate the higher self into their own understanding of creativity and their creative practice?
Well, one important step, I think, and what really helped me as an artist was to investigate the LHBs you have about what it means to be an artist or what it means to be a creative person. Because for so long, who says what is good art has been, you know, a very like minority group of people. If you Google the masters of art, just take a look at who it is, and you realize that the way that our culture has valued art is by whoever the artist that they think perspective is valuable.
Yeah.
And when you have a hierarchical culture that does not believe that each person is valuable and everybody's experience is valuable and perspective is valuable, of course you're not going to have like an art world or an economic world that's going to reflect actually the true value of art. And so understanding that where those thoughts come from and that hold you back from using your creative voice or exploring yourself creatively, because, and we talked about this at Sunflower Club, that when you were little, you were encouraged to express yourself for the simple act of self-expression, and also because people were fascinated by what was going to come out of you. Why? Because you're an amazing little divine being. That's like really, you know, and it's like, whoa, look at that. And they were praised for this finger painting, not because it was good, but because you made it and you made it. And it was so beautiful to see what you made. And then we get to this age where they're like, if it's not like this, then it's not good. And we're convinced that unless we fit into whatever that standard was, then there's artists over here and then there's non-artists over here. And so many people are discouraged from accessing that. And another thing that I feel like it was really helpful for me to realize was I believe that all art is just channeling this divine creative energy that we're all just being channeling through, letting our come through us is really what creativity is. And it looks different coming out of each one of us because we all have different experiences. You know, coming through us, it makes a shape, it makes a form, but it's the same stuff, right? We're all just using the same material, but as it's like channeling through us, it comes out different because we're different. But ultimately, it's just this moment, and just one little moment in time, you know? And so I got so much less precious about what I was making because I was like, okay, like it's not me. Yeah. It's not really me.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. Yeah, I really believe in extracting capitalism from creativity. And that doesn't mean that artists shouldn't get paid for their work, because they should. But I think we've been taught that, you know, there's this privileged class of artists that are, you know, super talented and like published authors and professional artists, and the creativity is for them, and everyone else is just supposed to, you know, get a job and like be quiet and like suppress their own creative nature. And like you said, it is an energy that moves through us. You know, I think that's what our intuition is. I think our intuition is our connection to our higher self, which is pure creative energy. Like the spirit of creation moves through us, like you said, and it expresses itself in different ways. Yeah. And I think it's our nature. And I think that when we suppress that nature, we're doing ourselves a disservice. It's similar to suppressing an emotion. You know, like it's so important to feel our emotions. Like we all experience sadness, we all experience trauma, whether major or minor, and we either can suppress that and bury it inside of us, where it's going to atrophy and decay and turn into emotional sickness or spiritual sickness, or even eventually manifest as a physical sickness. You need to feel it and transmute it to get it out of you. And I feel like when we suppress our creativity, that's the same thing. It eats away at us. And it doesn't matter if you're a famous artist or not. I love the analogy of, okay, how many people in the world are going to be Olympic runners? Very few.
Right.
I've never met an Olympic runner, and I've met a lot of people. Yeah. But you know, I go to the running trail and there are all kinds of people out there running. Yeah. Because it's good for them. Yeah. And it's healthy and they love it and their body wants it. Yeah. So there's benefit
I love that
to
analogy.
Right. without being on that hierarchical mindset. It's like, no, it's good for you. So I love to say it's not about being good at creativity. It's about creativity being good for you.
Yes. Oh, that was so good. It's really good.
So I want to talk a little bit more about your own creative journey and process. One of the things that you posted on Instagram recently that I thought you just really nailed it. You said, all the ways you didn't fit in growing up are the coolest things about you. So I just want to talk about when you made that switch from being embarrassed of being weird and like being called weird, and it's like an insult in a way for them, but then you start to embody your own weirdness, and then in doing so you transmute it into art, and like in a very public way, because you are going on stage and rapping and like putting yourself out there and really putting yourself, you know, on display and all your idiosyncrasies and weirdness and transmuting it into beautiful art. Did that come naturally to you, or what was that like to really turn what was a weakness into a strength?
Well, I'll tell you one story that I think sums it up, because first of all, what really is helpful is to be around other weirdos.
Yes.
And having community.
Totally.
And being exposed to other people who are breaking the mold of what is tradition or what you are fitting in. I mean, that's so essential because it gives you permission. So I moved to New York, and I ended up, you know, dating somebody that was really involved in like the Williamsburg art scene back, you know, like TV on the radio. It was like when it was like freak folk. It was like very cool. Yep. and I was getting involved, you know, I was dating somebody who was friends with all of these people. And do you remember the band Coco Rosie?
Sure.
Okay, so my partner at the time was like beatboxing and producing for Coco Rosie. And then one night they were hanging out at our apartment, and I was a huge fan, and they're total weirdos. Mm-hmm. And they were all like freestyling. We were like drinking a lot and being silly. And because my partner was like producer, and they were like, get in the booth. And I was like, what? You know, like totally like socially anxious, just like, okay. And I get in the booth, and I just start, I don't know what it was. It was just like something happened, and I just started like freestyling. It didn't rhyme. It was just so weird. And I started talking about like a bunny rabbit running around Brooklyn and like setting things on fire. And it was like so weird. And I just kind of like channeled it. And then I like stopped, and I was like, oh my God, what the hell did I just do in front of these people? And I came out, and they were like, you know, clapping like, whoa, that was awesome. And I was like, oh God. Next morning, my partner was like, let's make an album. Wow. And I was like, you're freaking joking, right? You're joking. And they were like, no, let's do it. And they were like, I know what you should call it. I know what and they were like, I'll produce it, and you'll be the vocalist. And they were like, I already know what you should call yourself. And I was like, what? And they were like, Bunny Rabbit. Yeah. So that's how it started. So I think I realized in those moments that when I get to that pure place, that kind of uninhibited, not trying to be cool, not trying to be good, not trying to be anything, like trusting the moment. Like I was saying, it's just a flash of a moment of time. I realized that there's value in that. I realized that it felt really good. And it kind of just, I, you know, sometimes I capture that same thing when I'm like really in the flow. Sometimes I don't, but I realize that that's like the money.
Yeah. I so agree. I think it's so important not to analyze during the moment of creation, because like I think it's fine, like whatever, if I'm a writer, so there's always a time to edit or whatever, but when I'm writing during that moment of ideation, I do my best just to let it flow through exactly as it comes through, even when I don't understand it.
Yes.
Like sometimes I'll just sit there and be like if I'm going to write a poem, I'm just like, okay, I don't know what I'm going to write about, but I just need like a first line. And I just sit there and I just wait, and whatever comes through, I don't even know what it means or why it's coming through, but I've learned just don't second guess it, just write it down. Like I wrote a couple of years ago when I was writing my poetry book, I like sat down like I want to write a poem tonight, and the title came through, and it just said, watching CNN on peyote. And I'm like, what? And I did not expect that. And then I had to go, and then I had to figure out, like, okay, what would it be like to watch CNN on peyote? I've never done peyote even, but I wrote a whole poem from the perspective that I took too much peyote, and I'm sitting there watching CNN, and what would be like.
Yeah.
And I didn't expect that to come through, but I just like went with it.
Yeah.
So I always say, like, creation and an editing, or, you know, intuition and analysis, they're like different stages. So I think it's so important in that act of creation just to trust what's coming through and just like go with it.
Yeah. In my book, in the creativity chapter, I have an exercise in there that is 30 days of channeling. And whether it's like music or drawing or writing or whatever, and then you do it for a certain time period for 30 days, and you never share it. It is, you know, it's never going to be shared. I mean, you can go back and make something from it later, but the entire point is that, you know, no one is ever, and it's just to get you into that muscle of just channeling. And it's, you know, it's so, and you have like your box of channelings, and it's like just for you.
Tell us a little more about your rap career. Like, I don't think, if people don't know, you know, because I was Googling some of your memes the other day, and there's so much like awesome press that you got, like New York Times and other big publications, like as a rapping meme artist, which is like so amazing. So like, you ended up putting out a lot of tracks and like being a rapper. Like, what was that like?
I mean, I'm a writer, you know?
Yeah.
I'm a writer. And so it made sense for me to be lyrically, it's basically just it's basically just poetry. You know, even sometimes the word rap, I'm kind of like, yeah, maybe, I don't know. I don't even necessarily call it that. I feel like I'm a surrealist lyricist is what I like to say. Or, you know, or I did it for the other music, like, because it's basically just, I love like creating visuals through words. And I think music is such an amazing form to do that. I love like painting the picture, and I love collaging words together to create an aesthetic. That's basically how I approach it. And a vibe. And of course, it's going to be like part like Disneyland, part like sex, part like psychedelic, part like healing, part like, you know, and it's all the things that I am, like aesthetically, the things that inspire me. Like, you know, it's basically like my favorite outfit in each song. I guess if that makes any sense at all. But, you know, I haven't made new music for a while, and I am interested to see what it would actually sound like now, and I am going to start making new music. But in terms of music, I love performing and stuff, but I think that music industry in a lot of ways is a lot of work, a lot of moving parts, and I love it so much, and I'll never ever stop doing it. But I also at the same time recognize that my healing had to come first. And I'm still to discover how that fully integrates in music, and what that means for my career in music moving forward. I have not yet.
Yep.
I don't see it because it was very separate.
I get you.
Now I'm like, I'm not sure, but I trust it's gonna happen.
I totally agree. It's going to integrate at some point.
Yeah.
Because that's one of the things that I really love about your art and your creative journey. And we're very similar in this sense. Like we're both like have been artists for a long time, and our creativity has taken on many forms, and we've experimented in lots of different areas and genres. And now what you've really settled into, and myself also, is like using your art as service to help others.
Yes.
And to provide, you know, healing and inspiration and transformation to people in need. And I just love that so much because I feel like in the past, art and creativity was about, again, about talent and being the best. And we had these artists that we put on pedestals, like whether it's Shakespeare or Picasso, these like geniuses. But it's like, is that helping the world anymore? And I just love this new paradigm that I feel like we're entering, where service is valued more than it used to be. And like, how can we apply our creative talents to not just being so great ourselves, but helping to heal the world through our own creative expression?
Yes, because it also reminds you what it in many ways as artists we lose sight of the love that our art is trying to give us when we're not in the right mind frame about it, because it is such a gift to our lives. And just like any other relationship, we can make our relationship to our art and our creativity very toxic. And we'll have a toxic relationship to our art, and we'll abuse it, and we'll say it's never enough, and we'll be overly judgmental of it. You know, it's just like our relationship to our body. You know, it's just like any other relationships that we can really be a bad partner to our art. And, you know, realizing that your art's trying to love you, and you have to love it. You have to love it and praise it and encourage it and be grateful for it. And, you know, that you're in relationship to your practice and you need to be a good partner. And so, yeah, it was like, that was a big one for me, realizing that my art was trying to love me, and I was sitting there being like, you're not good enough. And how not right that is.
Totally. Yeah. And speaking of art, so I love how the first chapter of your book is about social media.
Yeah.
I thought that was an interesting decision, but a really like a real one, because it's such a big part of our lives, especially as content creators. So I love how you just kicked off the book and be like, let's talk about social media. And it kind of opens with a great quote: "No amount of likes will make you like yourself." So as a content creator, like, what is your current relationship with social media? Because you use it as a form of creative expression and to connect with others, and you're bringing a lot of goodness to that platform. But there's also so many things that, you know, we can get swept away in the comparison game, and even just the social media phone addiction game. So how do you balance your own mental well-being with being a content creator on social media?
It's taken a lot. I mean, there's been a lot in that process, but I feel like I've gotten better at it in terms of my mental health when I realized that ultimately it's a form of communication. And what is it that I want to communicate? You know, what is it that I want to say? And when I really take the time to think about that, I want to say something loving. What else is there to say? And of course, it's going to come out different. And of course, sometimes it's going to look like this. And there's all kinds of forms of love. But when I realized that it's actually an opportunity to affect and to communicate, you know, that it is, that to honor it in that capacity. And to also recognize that where people are at, what they're posting, they just like you struggle with knowing what to say, feeling inadequate, comparing, and just focusing on that there's humans there and they're imperfect, and not to just you know, to try to see it through the lens of love. And if that's not your headspace, then you can't, you know, it's like, you have to ask yourself, why am I here right now?
Yeah. I had a breakthrough moment last year around my relationship with social media, where I had this thought of like, what if everything I put into social media, I treated it as like an offering to the world, right? Like a gift or a blessing to the world. Because we're always like putting out vibrations or energy or ideas, or like we're always spreading memes. Like a meme is like a viral thought or an idea. That's like the true definition of meme. So like we're always perpetuating some meme or another. Like, are you putting out memes of, you know, complaining and negativity. Like, what meme are you spreading? So I got really serious about what are the memes that I'm spreading. And yeah, I make memes, but like, what's the energy that I'm putting into it?
Mm-hmm.
And is it going to be a net positive in the world? Or is it going to be a net negative? Mm-hmm. So it really helped me just like look at my own message and be like, what energy do I want to amplify in the world? Mm-hmm. And to really be a spokesperson for that energy.
Yeah.
Which, there's another chapter of your book that's about activism. Mm-hmm. And I think that's also such an important topic. And you say in that chapter that love is a political act. Mm-hmm. So how do you see the relationship between the higher self and political activism? And it's such a important topic now more than ever, mm-hmm. and one that you don't shy away from in your own work. Mm-hmm. So just like, what's your take on your relationship with activism, mm-hmm. especially from the perspective of the higher self?
Well, I think one of the things that I feel really is helpful about the higher self perspective when it comes to these larger issues or about suffering in the world and injustice and stuff like that is to recognize the learned hierarchical beliefs separate from the higher self, from the human being. Because I think right now it's so disheartening to see like hatred, bigotry, oppression, domination, violence, and all this dehumanization happening all over the world. And of course, it's heartbreaking. It makes you angry, rightfully so. But I think you can really get lost there and feel stagnant when you aren't able to understand that this is learned behavior, that these beliefs, this perspective is taught. Mm-hmm. And what is the antithesis to that, which is affirming everybody's inherent value, and that to me is what love is the recognition of our wholeness and our interconnection. So for me, it's like love is a political act in the sense is that love recognizes where love is needed. Mm-hmm. To be love is to be the voice of love when love is what's needed. And a lot of times that means saying, no, this isn't right. But we do it with the understanding that what we are doing is affirming the inherent value of every living being. We're doing it not through, these people over here are monsters. Mm-hmm. And I without getting too much into it, this is every revolution, every war. Both sides thought they had the moral high ground. Right. Okay. So what are we doing? This is about uplifting all people and about affirming the value of all people, and doing that by showing, by also getting, and I think we all have different roles to play in this, but love points out lovelessness. Mm-hmm. Love points out injustice. Love says, no, this is wrong. Mm-hmm. That's what love is. And so much of the language of compassion and stuff has been weaponized to, toxic positivity and spiritual bypassing and things like that. And I don't know how you can talk about compassion without talking about suffering. I don't know how you can talk about peace without talking about where there is no peace. So yeah, I don't see any separation between what is, our inner journey as the outer journey, And so, yes, we have to, in my opinion, we have to talk about what love would do here.
I totally agree. This is a quote that I've been sharing recently by James Baldwin. The role of the artist is exactly the same as the role of the lover. If I love you, I have to make you conscious of the things you don't see.
Ooh, yeah. Yes.
Bunny, thank you so much for being you. Thank you so much for all the work that you do for putting out this amazing new book. I'm such a fan of this book. I truly am. Everyone pick up Hello Higher Self, An Outsider's Guide to Loving Yourself in a Tough World. And it's been so fun to hang out with you this weekend.
It's been so fun.
And to be here in Austin with you. So wishing you all the luck and just thank you for everything you do. You're the best.
Thank you. You're the best too.